Hello and welcome to the Unspoken CEO. Today I'm joined by Sara Chandran. I'm not going to fudge what she does. I do know what she does, but I find it quite fascinating actually, and I'd rather let her explain it. So she is the founder of Fresh and Fearless, which is hard for me to say. I don't know why, but welcome, Sara.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm really
pleasure.
excited to be here. So I guess for your listeners, hi everyone. I'm Sara Chandran. Pronouns are she, they. So that's me. Founder of Fresh and Fearless, which is a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultancy. I started it kind of informally at the end of 2019 on the back of a redundancy, thinking to myself, I really don't want to work in another agency. I would love to have autonomy and be able to pick and choose my hours and work in a way that suits my brain. So did that and launched at the beginning of 2020. It's been doing that for 5 years, which is incredible. And I feel so privileged to be able to say that and have had such a beautiful journey along the way. I'm also like a coach and mentor, so I support people who are also, thinking about pivoting in their careers. So my background is I started in kind of PR and marketing world and then pivoted into DEI. And I'm also a trustee for a very cool charity called Another Way, which is an environmental education charity that was founded by a wonderful young person called Amy Bray. And she started it when she was only 16 years old. And it helps young people around the world, around the UK, with trying to tackle climate change and kind of reverse the damage that we've seen on our planet. And then the coolest thing about me is not actually about me, which is I have a very cute Labrador called Casper, who is actually Fresh and Fearless brand mascot. So if you check out my social media links, you often see him feature quite heavily on there because one, it gets around the algorithm because it doesn't like DEI very much. And also he's just very cute and brings a very nice nature to the work that I do.
Brilliant. And now I've got to ask the difficult question because obviously you've chosen the easy route of working in DE&I, which is incredibly no, it's not at all. We're both kind of in that DEI world, and I'm in the sustainability world, which is fine on the lovely LinkedIn where we're in that bubble and we see lots of stuff about this. But how welcome is what you do in the world? How welcome is DE&I really?
Well, obviously, right now in 2025, there is very mixed opinions around DEI. We're seeing DEI kind of be weaponized on a political climate and on a political landscape to kind of misconstrue the actual meaning of what we do, right? We're trying to create a world that is welcoming and inclusive for everybody. It's not about doing it for one person or not for the other person. Like DEI is absolutely and has always been from the very start about everyone. I do sometimes feel nervous when I meet strangers for the first time out of the context of the workplace and they ask, what do you do? What kind of work do you do? And, I think about in the context of, I've recently started playing golf. So I obviously play with random people every time. And when they ask me that question, I get quite apprehensive. I start to tense up. I'm like, do I tell them the light version of it? Do I tell them the real version of it? Because I just don't know what their interpretation or reaction will be.
Well, you've got a whole day together doing 18 holes, so go all in.
Exactly. So I often just share because I'm like, maybe hopefully at the beginning of a round I can share what I do, and then by the 18th hole they kind of come to understand what it is. But that shows my bias, right? Because I'm basing my interpretation of what someone looks like and how they're going to respond to the DEI world. So it's been a big learning curve on that. But for the most part, everyone is really welcoming. I think we only see a very, concentrated version of things via the media. The media would like us to think that everyone has, cancelled DEI in their organizations and everyone's kind of rolling back on all their initiatives. But actually the true nature of it is people are still standing firm and doing the important work. And I think it's really important to elevate those stories and remind ourselves that that's happening, because sometimes when we think that nothing is going on and everyone's rolling back, it can make us feel a bit hopeless. a long way to answer your question.
No, that was absolutely perfect, because it's almost like you're, from the outside, it feels like you're running against the tide, and it's good to hear that, no, the doors are still open for you. I mean, what is the message that Fresh and Fearless gives? What do you deliver as such?
So often when I talk to clients, and I think the nature of like my branding and the way that I deliver my work, this work is serious, but it doesn't have to be seriously boring. You know, we can create some fun with it. We can do things in a different way. So I also host a podcast called Out of the Office, and I bring on guests to dissect episodes from the very infamous show, The Office. So we mostly look at the episodes from the US show. And we talk about, you know, the Michael Scotts and the Dwight Schrutes and, you know, the dynamic in these workplaces and what they show us about, you know, what real friendship and community looks like in the workplace, but also what stereotypes and discrimination can also be like, and how it can affect people at work. And I think it's just a fun, great way to get the message across without it being like almost feeling like about compliance. You know, this is about humans and connecting with each other. And I think, you know, storytelling is key in that. And there's no better story than The Office.
See, now you've got me, because I've watched the British one, and I avoided the American one because I just presumed it wouldn't be any good. Have I got it wrong?
I actually haven't seen the UK one and only seen the US one, which is very random. I know.
Okay, so we've both got homework to do there. That's what I worked out.
Yeah.
Because I just remember the UK one and how it is an absolute DEI nightmare.
Yeah.
But it's showing you just how bad it can be, and that's the point.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what you said, you've been doing this 5 years, so you obviously went through COVID. How's that been, building a business over that time?
Yeah. So when the year first started, I remember going, it's 2020, what a lovely number. This means that everything's going to be wonderful and I have like great hopes ahead. When the pandemic did hit, it was like, it was really demoralizing, and I was very worried and didn't know what was going to happen because I had just only started. But there were so many people within my community and in my network that stuck their neck out for me, which I will forever be grateful for. You know, they, you know, talked to their bosses and they talked to their team and they reached out to their HR leaders and said, hey, look, I don't know if you're looking for anyone to deliver workshops on DEI, but I know somebody. And that was just how it started. And, you know, I think everybody was chronically online because there was nothing else to do in the pandemic. And I was posting a lot on social media and people finding out about the business through that way. And also with Black Lives Matter, you know, that obviously then peaked after George Floyd's murder at the, you know, in 2020. Yeah. 2020. And so many businesses in 2021 were like, oh crap, we've really got to focus on this. There's got to be some work to be done. And so, you know, the things that kind of stopped in the early parts of 2020 started to pick up again because of that as well.
So what is it that drives you personally in the DEI space? Why is that your passion? Why do the difficult stuff?
So I come from a background that, you know, there wasn't a lot of privileges that were awarded to me. And I navigated a lot of spaces being the only one and struggled with that a lot. But I think at the time I never realized the reasons why I was struggling. You know, I've always been quite academic. And when I went to university, I was like, you know, really excited and looking forward to my future. And when I was there, I just didn't always quite fit in. And I struggled with the seminars and my social anxiety would peak because, you know, they'd go around the room and everyone has to give their answers. And I would just feel like the walls caving in and everything like that. And before I went to university, I knew that I wanted to kind of step in to the political world because I'd always been quite political. I think by nature of being, you know, underprivileged and underrepresented, you know, you have no choice. You have to kind of be political to, you know, help yourself and your communities. And so I knew that I wanted to step into the Students' Union and do some work with the Students' Union because that's a good way to step into the political world. And so I did that and was successful and became education officer, which was an elected role. And I did that for a year. And during the course of the year, I remember seeing a report that basically said that Black and brown students don't achieve 2 1s or firsts as often as their white students, despite coming in with the exact same grade. And I was like, oh my God, all right, let me read more about this. And then there was like, lists and lists of bits of research about why this was happening. It was this sense of belonging that was being missed, and Black and brown students weren't seeing curriculums that represented with names that sounded like them, and professors didn't look like them, and you can't be what you can't see. So it just was never an environment that felt welcoming and that you belonged. And I remember going through this list and I was like, tick, 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 tick. And I was like, this is why I struggled at university.
You're odd. No, you're not.
There was all of these things, and it was just like this real, eye-opening experience where suddenly, where I thought I was the problem, I realized there was a problem with the institution. There was a problem with education and how academia is set up. It was never designed for someone like me to succeed. And I did succeed, against the odds and all of that lovely stuff. I had a very lovely bunch of friends, and I met my now fiance at university. So it all worked out very beautifully. But because of that experience, I kind of said to myself, I don't want anyone else to feel that way, where they internalize all of those things as that they are broken, that there's something wrong with them, when actually the problem is the system.
Yeah. I had similar, that maybe a little overshare, but in my early 30s, I suffered from depression. And this was just at the turn of the noughties. And I was working, where was I? The Halifax Bank. I was on a horrible, horrible project. I was stressed to my eyeballs, and I just couldn't cope. I went to the doctor, and I got told I got depression. I thought, you can't have depression, because in my group, that just means you're a bit weird and you go to the funny farm. And it wasn't like now that it's being talked about that depression is a real thing. And everyone knows now 1 in 4 people have depression or know somebody who has depression. And I just thought, well, I can't hide it, which was my natural state. I want to hide that. But no, I thought I've got to talk about this, because more and more people are doing this. I think I always wanted to stand up on the floor at work one day and just shout, has anyone got any antidepressants? And just see how many hands went up. But it's that kind of, we can hide from it, or more and more people can actually stand up and talk about, how do we make this change? I think it's admirable.
Yeah, I think that representation is so key, and that vulnerability and openness, because they're like, we think about social media, we only see a small proportion of people's lives, but we might assume that they're all good and everything's fine and they're smashing it and they're having all the success in the world, but actually they could be struggling behind the screen and we just don't know it. And actually there's a lot that we're similar in terms of the things that we're struggling with and the things that we're kind of grappling with. I think about being a founder or a CEO, like there are things that we will all be experiencing very similarly, but won't often hear about other people talking about that openly, unfortunately.
Well, I wonder then if, without going into too much detail or giving away anything here, but are there 1 or 2 easy things that the average idiot like me can be doing at work to make the world of DE&I better, to be more accepting of other people? Are there any kind of quick tips you've got? I appreciate I'm putting you on the spot.
Quick tips.
Yeah. Go on, just condense it all into
in a nice little bow and a thing. I think having conversations like this, I think they're incredibly invaluable. There are obviously things that make us different, but there's so much more that makes us so alike. And being able to have these conversations, share our stories, we build those connections, and then we can start to go, okay, cool. Yeah, I get it. I see those similarities. We're all fighting the same fight. Like, let's move forward together. Let's see how we can work together. And then I think the second thing is not holding back due to the fear of making a mistake. Like, when we can't be perfect, we're human. We're, inherently going to make mistakes and fail and get things wrong. And that's absolutely part of the journey. There's no perfect person or perfect DEI consultant. Like, I'm continually learning every day. And I think embracing that being imperfect is better than being silent, and embracing that as you go along is really important.
Spot on. Absolutely. And to kind of back up what you're saying, and I hope this doesn't come across as too nasty, but I grew up in Hull, incredibly white, surrounded by white people. Yeah, I probably grew up racist. And then I came to London and all of a sudden I'm mixing with all sorts of people, sexes, sexualities, etc. And you say, okay, this is normal. But when you're not in that mixing world, when I go back to how I haven't been for a long time, you just see, you see all of the kind of the behaviors you'd expect. And I'm careful not to admonish myself for what I was like when I was 15. I didn't know. But it's getting the message into those places where you don't have the mixture of sexuality, race, etc. That's one thing I think is strong. That's why I think it's admirable what you're doing. You're going in and educating old people like me. Good luck with that. Good luck.
But I think there's so much power in people from communities where they've started to see things differently, and then when they go back into those communities, people are more likely to listen to you than they are to me, right? Because there's someone that they recognize themselves in you. And so breaking down those walls and having those conversations, that's when allyship can show up. So I often think about like the trans community, for example, like people that are cis all having a debate and having a conversation, like the people around the room, if they're like, everyone's saying something that is pretty transphobic, that one person who belongs in that group that isn't transphobic, that's the most important and critical time to then say to your friends, hey, let's break that down because I do genuinely think you're being transphobic. Let's discuss it properly and talk about why that's so problematic. Because I think those are the most powerful moments to actually shift people's perspectives on things that they may not necessarily have known or been exposed to before.
Yeah. And you've reminded me of a guy, Brian. Worked with him at Deloitte, lovely bloke. He ran the Black Lives Matter movement at Deloitte. I'm sure he's still there, going strong. He explained it as though you're on a travelator and you're on the travelator at the airport and you're going by some trouble. You can watch it as you go by, but real allyship is when you turn and run against the travelator and run back to tackle what's going on. And that's always stuck with me. It's like, how much of that do we all do? We just watch it and go, I don't agree with that, but I'll carry on by. But actually, it's for us to turn and address it.
Yeah, there's so many conversations I have with people, and they're like, "Oh, you'll never guess what I heard," and they'll tell me all these things, and it's like it's appalling. And I'm like, "What did you say to them?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a good moment to, and it is hard. Like I do empathize, like having those kind of debates, or certain things shouldn't be a debate, but having those conflicting views and calling people up on the things that they're doing wrong and being offensive can be difficult, but it's so important, and we need more allies doing that.
Yeah. Well, count me in and call me out when I get it wrong, please.
Likewise.
Okay. Easily. So where's your dream for Fresh and Fearless? Where do you want to get to? What's the big goal?
Gosh, such a big question. To be honest, I think I'm living that dream right now. Like I get to, I got my dog Casper. I always wanted to have a Labrador, and I've got that life. I live in a really lovely house with my partner. Hopefully one day we'll be able to own our own place. I've taken up golf. I now have a sports hobby, which I never thought I would, and I can balance that with my day-to-day. I have a community now. Like I've met so many wonderful people in this industry, in different industries, and I feel like I'm in a really, really wonderful place right now, and I feel like I'm living that dream.
Well, perfect answer. Keep going.
Thank you.
Okay, so you got happy answer, beautiful smile. I'm now going to drag you down to tell me about a difficult time.
Surprise.
Because I think one of the things that I've known, particularly since I've started these couple of startups I've got now, is that you have to put on your game face all the time. You have to say everything's great. You have to, I've got a great product and what have you, but inside you're dying, you're worrying about the mortgage or the rent, or am I even doing the right thing? And I really believe that if we share that, more people understand that it's normal to struggle or have challenges. So I was going to see is there an example of where you've had a really tough time that you haven't necessarily shared, but you've carried on with the business?
So I've had my own journey and struggles with depression and anxiety. I self-diagnosed ADHD as well, and I've been on a journey trying to unlearn a lot about having ADHD and what I should be able to do and not be able to do, but embracing that I'm not neurotypical. So there are different ways that, I should operate. I have had moments, and I have shared this on social media every now and again, but I've had moments where I do struggle to like get out the house and, do basic self-care and make things work. There have been times in the past where, I was struggling so much that I just didn't eat all day because I just didn't have the energy or the motivation or the drive to like make something simple to eat. And, people would say, Sara, have you eaten? And I would be like, no, I probably should. I used to feel bad about like ordering something to take away, but I've learned to embrace that sometimes that's okay. Sometimes when you're looking after yourself, like doing the things that people think are lazy or too easy and, cost effective, like that's not always possible for people like me and like, that experience ADHD and things of that nature. So yeah, I think that's something that I've struggled with. And yeah, I've definitely been on a journey with that. And I like to think that I'm in a good place now. And I've actually, something that I've said that I'd commit to this year was finding balance. And one thing that I've learned over the years is how much my menstrual cycle actually shapes my mood. So I now track things so closely. So I know, okay, if I've got a big meeting or a proposal that I need to write, I'm not going to do it when I'm feeling at my lowest and like just want to like curl up under a blanket and watch Moana on, and just chill out. Actually, I'll do it when, maybe I'm ovulating and like I'm feeling great about life and everything looks really green and bright and lovely. And that's
great. You've understood that and got on top of it.
Yeah, and it's been transformative working with my body in that way. And I think, if everyone can just take note of that in themselves, and if you have the ability to shape your day around that and your weeks around that, it really does help.
Yeah, I love the way you talk about it because it does sound like, yes, you've had your depression, and depression comes and goes, we all know, but you've adapted, you've learned to give yourself self-care, which is key to it, as I know. Like, okay, oven chips, they're rubbish and they're crap for you, but if that's all you can do it.
Exactly.
And I had a similar thing a year or so ago where it was actually, what am I doing with this business idea? Kind of took me into the depression spiral. And I had to turn everything off for a month because I just thought I'm not in any state to keep going out there trying to find clients for this new venture.
Yeah.
Because it's just almost like a self-perpetuating loop of I'm not good enough for you. You don't need me, and you bring yourself down. But I like the way you've actually, knowing what it's like when you're that down. It's hard. It's very hard to do things as simple as self-care, but you did well. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. No, it's been a journey, and I'm sure I'll learn so much more over the years. And I think one of those things is that each year and each month things will strike you differently, and it is hard. And I think for anyone like that does experience it, it's just holding out and just knowing that it will get better, because those moments do pass, and it's just so hard when you're in the depths of the depression.
Yeah,
it's a dark place. And yeah, just knowing how I feel now, maybe I'm just talking to myself when I'm in my next like bout of depression, like, sorry, it will get better. Like, it's not going to feel like that forever, I promise.
and people will say, well, why didn't you call me? I think, well, because that's the last thing I thought of doing. But you and I know that when you've got people that understand and care around you, they're there to help.
Yeah.
And also leave you in a dark corner when you're grumpy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, be sure to call. No. I do think I had almost like this little Rolodex back in the day, a virtual Rolodex of people who were on the inside of depression. We all knew each other, and if we were having bad days, it's like we're going for a little walk. This was back in my days at Deloitte. I need a walk. I need to go for a lovely place to walk, but we all need it. It's much more common.
And I think community, is something that I've learned to appreciate so much more in the last year or so. It's incredible. It's so transformative for my mental health. Finding, people around you that will support you, and you support them, and maybe you can just sit and like chill with them, scrolling your phone, but it's nice having that presence next to you, and you don't necessarily have to talk. But there might be other people that you send 10-minute voice notes to, and you do that back and forth. It's finding what works for you, and surrounding yourself with people that have your back and are looking out for you and give you the permission to be like, yeah, put those chips in the oven and just eat, please.
Yes.
Sometimes you just need that.
It's ketchup.
Yeah.
It does sound like you've, over the last few years, built yourself a good community around yourself.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's been amazing. So thanks to my community. I love you all.
Well, you're going to tell them something now. So the other thing is, can you come up with 3 things that people don't know about Sara Chandran, the founder of Fresh and Fearless?
Okay, the first one is, it's going to sound so random, but I really want to share it for anyone that will ever listen to me. I got my first eagle in golf at the weekend, which is 2 under par for anyone that is not a golfer. And I've only been playing for a year.
You got a real eagle?
An actual real eagle. So I was playing a par 4. I got the shot in 2.
Well done. Which course? It sounds really easy. No, I'm rubbish.
So the context is all my drives are going left, which didn't help me for the first 16 holes. But on the 17th, it kind of takes a left turn. So my left drives were going really well on that. So I hit really, really well. I was like,
brilliant.
10 foot from the hole or something, and then chipped it in, and it just like bubbled in, and it was incredible. It was like and I actually teared up, and I couldn't believe that I teared up. And then I was like, the 18th, I couldn't focus. All I wanted to do was go to the clubhouse and tell my fiance and be like, blah, guess what happened? Yeah.
Give up now, because you'll expect that now.
I know I'm going to be chasing that feeling for the rest of my life. So yeah. One of the first few things my partner said to me was like, it'll be a few years until you get your next eagle. I was like, thanks, Blair. I was like, to be honest, it'll probably take 10 years.
No, stick at it. You'll get them. I've got a friend who just before lockdown took up golf, and I'm a rubbish golfer, but I used to take him and help him a little bit. He's now playing off about 15. Because he's just really, that's good if you don't know about golf, but he's just got on with it and kept playing and kept getting better. Meanwhile, I haven't touched my clubs for 2 years.
Oh, let's get around in. We'll definitely do that. It's so much fun, because my handicap is like 36, so I'm really bad.
Okay, so we're in the same league then. I can't play with him anymore. I can play with you.
Yeah. Although the thing I really like about golf is, like, my partner, he's a scratch golfer, and he's been playing since he was young. I can play with him and still beat him, even though he is obviously very, very good at the sport. And I think that's what's so nice about golf, that I think maybe in other sports isn't quite as easy to do. Like, you can be of all different abilities and still have a match with somebody and have an equal opportunity to either win or lose. It doesn't matter about if you're more skillful or not in some respect.
It's all about equal opportunities with you, isn't it? That's all you care about. But you're right, it's squash is the worst. If you're playing somebody you're better than at squash, you don't get exercise, but if they're better than you get run ragged.
Yeah.
Whereas just a handicapping system and you can compete at golf.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. I've never thought I'd play golf, because that was, my fiance's thing, and I was never a sporty person and definitely turned my nose up at golf. And then I joined the academy. So the thing that's great about my golf club is they've decided to close off the academy to any men, and it's only for young women and girls who are taking up the sport.
Wow.
Beginners, because they really want to get more women playing golf. And
where's
so
this?
This is in Malden.
Right.
So they're Malden Golf Club. And I joined the academy because I was like, okay, cool, let's just give it a go, a bit of fun. Like, if I hate it, whatever. And then unfortunately now, I now have a very expensive hobby.
Yeah. Well, it's not like having a horse. No, it almost is. Because you need better clubs now so you can get another eagle.
Yes, I do.
More lessons, and
it
never stops.
It's never
What else do you want to tell everyone?
Something that people most of the time don't know is that is my gender. So I'm actually pangender, which obviously is a very random one that not many people know about. But essentially, it's like being gender fluid. So, you know, I feel like my energy and my spirituality kind of influences a lot with that. And, you know, there are days where I feel more masculine or feminine, and I just kind of float between that I don't really assign meaning to gender in the same ways that maybe other people do for myself. But also being pangender, I don't really mind how people see me. It's more about how I see myself. You know, as a spiritual person, I believe in reincarnation. I'm sure I've been just a man or just a woman in all previous lifetimes. And this lifetime I'm pangender because I feel quite spiritual in my nature. So that's something that people might not know about me, and I love to share it.
Well, thank you. How do people react? Because you let's be honest, you look like a woman.
Yes. So I'm feminine presenting, you know, and people see me as a woman, and that's fine. Like I don't mind that in that respect with being pangender. When people react, to be honest, there isn't really reaction. I think people just don't know how to react. You know, I think very good friends of mine that are, you know, maybe more well equipped in this area of like language and things will ask, you know, what pronouns do you want me to use for you? You know, is there anything, you know, you need me to think about when it comes to like describing you or anything like that? You know, when I use image descriptions, for example, I'll often say like I'll describe myself as a feminine presenting person with like long hair and, you know, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's it really.
Cool. Because I did at the start, you introduced yourself as she, they.
Yes.
And I thought it was they, them, or she. But
yeah, so to be honest, I don't mind any pronouns. I think I prefer she, they, because I say I probably lean more feminine than masculine most times. I think it actually, to be honest, it's so funny because when I spoke to my partner about it, because, you know, this was something that came to light maybe a couple of years ago, and something that I went on a journey on with myself. And, you know, obviously when you're with somebody for 10 plus years and suddenly you break this information to them, they're like, huh, what does this mean? And he said, interestingly, that like once when I started to understand myself a little bit more and I shared about being pangender, he was like, it's so funny because my interpretation that was that you were going to become more like androgynous or like more masculine or like start wearing suits and all this kind of stuff. And he said, it's so surprising that you've actually started to be more feminine since coming out.
So it's like you've relaxed more into yourself.
Yeah, like I don't do it because society expects that of me. I'm just doing and leaning into the things that feel good to me on that day. But there are moments where there are like, you know, dysphoria and not feeling so good, and I just navigate that as and when it comes up for me.
Cool. Let's stick at it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you have one more? I think you've done well so far, apart from you being very jealous of.
I think I'm figuring this out as much as everyone else is. You know, people think that DEI, being a DEI consultant, means that, you know, everything, I know everything, or, you know, everything's screwed on into my head and I'm absolutely perfect. But, you know, I'm human like everybody else, and I'm on this journey with everyone else too. And so the more that want to be there with me, the happier that I'll be. So come join me on this silly little DEI journey.
I'm in. That's beautiful. Well said.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add, or should we end on that wonderful note?
I'm happy to end on that note and just to say thank you for inviting me to share and be so open. You're a great host, and I've always enjoyed your energy and grateful to know you.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. That means a lot. And I will actually share with everybody else that this has been special to me because we connected a couple of years ago, not just because I've actually got your name right most of the way through, but I think you were kind of the first person in the DEI space that I actually saw outside of a corporate world. And although we didn't connect much, we were both on a coaching course together. I just spotted it was your energy of like, no, you're going to achieve stuff. And it's so great to see that you've just gone from strength to strength. So I always wanted you to come and talk. It's just an excuse to get you on here.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here, and thank you for that. Yeah, it's been a roller coaster, but it's been a fun one these last few years.
And if we do play golf, we all know that you're going to win, so I've got no pressure now.
Yeah.
So we'll leave it at that. Look, this has been the Unspoken CEO. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Sara. Speak again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye.
We did.